the big one of the weekend, France v Ireland in the Stade de France this Saturday. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. February 12th, obviously. Kickoff 4:45, the later kickoff, and refereed by Angus Gardner, another Aussie in the middle with the whistle. Also assisted by Ben O'Keefe and Craig Evans on the touchline, with Ben Whitehouse in the TMO for this one. And yeah, it's going to be a great fixture. This is, for the last few years, this has never failed to be a great fixture of Test match rugby, regardless of the results, and I expect no different this Saturday.
Yeah, no question. I mean, this is arguably, there's a debate to be had, but it's arguably a game between the two form sides in world rugby right now. There's like endless quality on both sides. The offenses have been electrifying. Yeah. You know, in Ireland's case, you got 12 of the 15 starting that beat the All Blacks in November. In France, it's 14 of that 15. Both of these sides ran through the All Blacks. It wasn't close, really, in either game.
True.
Both of these sides capable of electrifying things. The two offences have been very, very spicy. The defences, even last week, started the tournament brilliantly. And there's just fascinating matchups all over the park between these two teams. And I think a lot of questions are going to be answered about both of them, where they stand right now. Who's the pretender and who are the real kings? I think you're going to get some good answers in a great game of rugby. Really good standard coming up this weekend.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Just a bit of history on the matchup. Since 1909, France and Ireland have played each other a total of 100 times. France have won 58 of those, with Ireland winning 35, and 7 matches have been drawn, including 2 draws in a row a few years back that we remembered as well. Recently, though, France have been edging it, and the recent record is a bit more telling. They won in Dublin last year and in Paris the year before. Ireland haven't beaten France since 2019.
No, indeed, yeah, that was their one win in the Galtier year. I mean, they've had a very good record in terms of the matchups out wide. France have had the advantage in recent years. Yeah. And yes, none of those historical records ever look great from an Irish point of view, because we've only gotten good recently, really.
That's true. Yeah.
But I mean, right now, as far as the winner of this game, it's up in the air. I mean, this is going to be, everyone's going to be watching this one right now. These are your betting favourites, 1 and 2 to win the competition.
1 and 2 in the competition at the minute, and looking very good, as you say. Form is very good going in, both coming off the back of wins, so somebody's always got to go in this one, which is always a fun dynamic as well. And there's a lot of talk about the side that comes out on top of this is probably, yes, your betting favourite to go all the way easily enough.
But listen, that will be seen. France will definitely go in as favourites, and we will start by looking ahead to this game from the point of view of the hosts, the French, Les Bleus. And from their point of view, having had a bit of a sluggish start, they eventually got the job done against Italy. But we do have their squad. They did announce it for this week's game. It's all class. Cyril Bay, Julien Marchand and Winnie Antonio make up a strong front row. Cameron Wokey and Paul Willemse, very balanced second row partnership of the heft and the skill. Francois Cross, Anthony Gélange and Gregory Aldrit make up their all-star back row. Cross coming back in. Then they got Dupont and Entomac, as you'd expect. Mo Fana comes in for the injured Dante at 12, with Ficou at 13, and then Villiers, Penaud and Jaminet making up the team. And they've gone for a meaty 6-2 split on the bench, with the likes of, these 6 forwards to introduce: Peter Movaka, Jean-Baptiste Gros, Demba Bamba, Roman Taufi-Fanua, Thibaut Flamont, and Dylan Cretin as well. So 6 really top-class forwards to bring in, and then they have Luku and Ramos covering the backs.
Good coverage from that,
potentially Dupont being 10 cover, maybe. I know Ramos has played at 10.
Ramos has as well, and I think Chamonix might have done once or twice in the later stages for Perth.
Yeah, they have cover
kind of rotated, and their relationship with the 10 jersey is probably a little different from what Ireland's are in terms of just the fulcrum of it. But obviously guys like Dupont, Entomac and Jaminet, that little core group in the back line, were, by their own standards and probably by their own admission, a little loose and a little poor in day one against Italy. But it's day one against Italy. They had COVID kind of disruptions in the camp in their preparations going into that one. So they came in a little off the pace in the first half, but the manner in which they were able to just rattle off those tries is very, very encouraging. And the sequence they put together on a few occasions, but that one in particular to put Villiers away, is the kind of stuff they're going to look to. Because Ireland were, while defending very well against Wales, were a little narrow, and the success they've had recently has been exposing bad matchups or favourable matchups for France out in the wide channels in a little bit of space. I'm thinking like Ntamak v Porter from France a few years ago, where Porter's a great all-action prop, but he's not going to win that battle in 5 metres of space, and that's what France are going to be all about. And those key men will look to up their performance levels quite significantly in this one.
Yeah, no question. I mean, like most games, there's you can boil it down to the sort of 3 key areas. You look at the offensive scheme, the defensive scheme, and then the forward pack, the individual quality of the forwards winning collisions and providing good ball. Yeah. Those are the 3 key ones. Even starting with the forward pack from the French point of view, like on paper, you're up against this all-star, dynamic, really good Irish forward pack, but there are areas that look to get after them. Porter creaked once or twice against Wales in the early goings against Thomas Francis.
Yeah.
They got that right-hand side of the scrum. Willemse filling in as the tight head lock with Weenie Antonio. And I remember last year for La Rochelle, it was Skelton on that occasion on the right-hand side, but Willemse is nearly as meaty as Skelton with Antonio, causing Leinster pain on that side of the scrum and in the carry game, just physicality. Yeah. But if France can unsettle Ireland, you'll look to them to attack that set piece at scrum time on that right-hand side, go after Porter, and
get
Cameron
up in the
Wokey
air.
is going to be trying to take
Ireland's
the
line out
away.
is still the most important set piece for Ireland, and France will know that. Like scrum is in their MO, and they are a team that is trying to go to their DNA. So guys like Antonio, and even off the bench, matchups like Grow versus or is it Grow on the bench there versus Finlay Beelum, when that has to happen. If you manage to tire Tyg Furlong out to the point where he comes off early, which does happen, that's a very favourable matchup for them to kind of exploit in the second half as well. But you're right in saying guys like Wokey are in there to balance that second row. Willemse tight head locking, but Wokey's kind of rangy paws in the air. He's a very, very good
Jay Launch as well as good in the air.
Launch as well. Their whole back row, to be honest, contribute in the aerial game in the line out. So getting that defensive end going, trying to spoil some of Ireland's attacks, because I think the stat is like more than 50%, like significantly more than 50%, more like 60% of Ireland's last 200 tries have launched from line out.
And
so disrupt that.
As important as that is to Ireland, it's a common enough denominator across teams. Like the line out is very, very important. Taking the platform away. Ireland's attack so far, we've said it in the last however many games that they've been going now, it's rhythmic, it's tempo based, and it's brilliant, and it's nigh on unstoppable with all the angles, with all the different options, and the guiding hand that Sexton's given them as well. But obviously, we'll get to that, Sexton not being in the team this week. But from France's point of view, the first point of action is just to take that source ball away from them. And another area, like Ireland have been very sharp on the offensive breakdown for the most part. They're pretty good at getting there. Like when a player is carrying, he's good enough to hustle through the carry, and usually his 2 options come in over the top, present clean ball. But France will be mindful. Like there was 1 or 2 occasions when Ireland got to the edge and then there was only one man supporting. I think there was one in particular when James Ryan, like Ireland got up the left hand touchline, and then Josh was the one man left clearing, and then there was another man there, and James Ryan, in trying to make up for the difference, came flying in at the side. And so if I was Galtier, I would have been making the point to Angus Gardner pre-game, watch their clean out accuracy, and then go after them on those isolated moments, try and attack the football, try and disrupt the breakdown, because Ireland, they do run an option kind of attack, and if France can get like a quick tackle where you're just getting the guy down quickly,
one good read and one good smash behind the game line, even one in 3 or 4 sequences, because Ireland will go through sequences like that, and you just need to time 1 or 2 good hits to disrupt that rhythm, and then you're in that Sean Edwards defence mould of just getting after them, getting up off the line, disrupting. When you get to advance because you've knocked them back off the gain line, then you can start to eat them up with force kicks.
I think that's so the key matchup. I mean, I heard Edwards talking after the game against Italy, and he would have been happy with how his boys went. They were, apart from 1 try off a drop ball from Jaminet, they held their defensive shape very well against a limited Italy team, got in their faces. But Edwards was saying, listen, it's all about Ireland, and he'd have been watching Ireland, and he's got a decent track record against Ireland in terms of getting what looks like a good Irish offence to all of a sudden look not so much like a good Irish offence, and getting after them in that area. I think he's going to be dreaming of scheming up a way to slow Ireland down, and it starts by disrupting their initial platform, and then bringing that line speed, targeting Carbery in that
this
position.
is it. That's it. Like, you don't have to change the plan too much. I was listening to a couple of things earlier on, going like, "Oh, geez, the game plan for France is completely out the window if they can't smash Johnny." And it's like, nah, it's easy. You just rub out Johnny, smash Joey. Grant. Like, it's Joey Carbery's first Six Nations start, despite being his 30-something cap. So, yes, get after the young 10. France are old school traditionalists in some aspects of their rugby, and like, you're never ever going to go to Paris as a 10 and not be under pressure. It happens to everyone. It's not just Johnny Sexton. It's going after the 10. It's disrupting. It's part of Sean Edwards' philosophy as well, as just pressure the 10, pressure the decision makers, force kind of less time upon them, and then capitalise on mistakes.
In a couple of sequences, they had Dupont covering the backfield, obviously covering the chip, but he was basically in a spy position where he had license to make a read, and he did a couple of times on Garbisi and come flying up out of the backfield, time his run, and get after
something
the 10.
You saw Pierre doing for the All Blacks as well last season.
Correct.
Exactly that, putting the half-back in that role, and sometimes they do it for box kicks as well, run from deep and shoot up, but
And I think they're going to use that, like when Carbery is running that line in behind that first pot of Irish forwards, that's one to get after him and just to shut down his options. I expect Dupont to do that on a couple of occasions. But then the real key as well, like Ireland are without Sexton, and that's obviously a weakness, and they want to shut down those flowing tracking runs that they're doing so well to open up the space on the outside. But it all starts initially, and it becomes much more easy to do if you can get a grip on that initial pot of three behind whom Carbery's running and all the shapes are taking place. There's always an initial pot of three, or at least most of the time, where the guy in a pivot position, often Tyg Furlong or whoever it might be, with an option either side. Tyg Byrne can get in that role as well. As like the likes of Josh van der Fury, look at his break last week. France need to cover that space and be like, this is where it's difficult. You need to be dominant in those areas. You need to shut them down. And Ireland, this is where their biggest strength is. They've got a lot of good athletes who are going to be running onto the ball. They've got good skills. France need to be able to get dominant tackles. Like, they're obviously being matched up man for man, but you want those double team tackles on that contact. You obviously want just to shut down that inside entirely, and that starts by like being able to react quickly and still make a dominant tackle is going to be so important in this game. If the likes of Willemse or Wokey are in that position, they're having to make a read, then they see the ball's going there, and then they get there and still on that reaction can make a dominant hit. If they can do that,
that's going to be the make or break, because if they can do that, then great, then it's a penalty then. But if they're a little bit off with it, or Antonio's a little bit gassed because it's phase 20 or something, and he throws a shoulder in without wrapping or something because of that thing, then those cards could be costly. The other thing, they need to mind the P's and Q's on that, but also, as you say, be proactive, be dominant on the defensive end.
The other thing they did, like Ireland were very, very tempo-full. Like the Gibson Park was driving this lovely tempo, and they were really, really quick to get into their shape. And France around the corner need to match that energy.
They do.
And they were, like, a couple of times against Italy, they were jumping offside. You need to mind your discipline, as you say, in that area. You need to hold your line, but you do need to fold into that shape to deal with what Ireland are doing quickly. And then it could take care of itself. You could get after Joey. Things might come a little unstuck. And basically what you're trying to achieve in those early exchanges is just to get Ireland a little unsettled, get Joey a little out of his comfort zone, get him dropping into the pocket, get him kicking the ball, have Jaminet deal with those balls, and then get themselves settled into the game from an offensive point of view, which is where they like their matchup.
That's it, yeah. Well, like the main ones they'll focus on is the defensive end, because it's been an all-action Ireland forward pack, and even the recent success they've had over Ireland, they haven't edged the possession stats. They've had to defend wave after wave of green attack, so they know that what's coming from that point of view. But then, once you do get your offensive sets being sharp enough and being kind of game enough to switch that on very, very quickly and transition quickly and catching Ireland on the turn is something this France team are just built to do in some ways. Like, if they can create that little bit of space out in the wide channels for 2v2s, if the ball's in the French hands, that's a favourable matchup all day long, no matter who the personnel is.
I think set pieces are important. I think the broken field is obviously important. I don't think that they should be in a position where they're going to be running like long multiple phase sets against the Irish phase, because when they did that against Italy, they themselves were a little slow. They were a little indecisive. Obviously, it's the kind of jazz rugby
for that. So their multi-phase still does need a little bit of kind of polish in terms of that regard, whereas their transition does. It's as polished as they come in World Rugby.
Transition great, and then set piece can be great as well in terms of working it to the edges and then working it the other way back.
Some of those tries they put together, the one in Twickenham, the set piece strike move on phase one, they have that in their locker, and a playmaker like Fiku in the centre affords you a lot of flexibility on phase one.
Yeah, for sure, and just working it to either edge, but also like on those little plays are the ones, the multi-phase plays, which might see them come unstuck against an Ireland defence that was kind of eating alive the space they were trying to attack. It was a little jazzy, and Dupont was picking it up, looking for a runner. The runner would come, he was kind of going into the contact pretty high, and that is where the Ireland defence can be dangerous. All of a sudden, that's where your matchup can be
turn it over, or you can just end up in a long tackle. Like they will adopt a KBA, keep the ball alive kind of mantra, which is one of the great clashes of styles that we have got to see over this exact matchup, is that Ireland will go through phase after phase and will resource rucks, whereas France will endeavour to try and avoid rucks at all cost. If you can get a hand free, get it back to Dupont, go again, no offside line required, and then you're in a bit of unstructured play. So who manages to succeed in that contact or that collision will be so key. Like even if you can get hit by two men, which is not beyond, get hit by two men and get the arm free and get it away in a very French style, then
it changes everything.
And the guys will fold straight. They'll recognise that opportunity immediately and kind of fold into it, and that's where you want to try and play into a bit of chaos to kind of unstick what is quite a good structured Irish defence. But once it gets unstructured,
it does. It gets a little loose when it gets unstructured. If there's ever a period of 20 seconds without a ruck, Ireland tend to be lost
all over the place.
And they like to be able to fall back into that routine shape, and that is definitely France keep it alive is definitely part of that. The other thing is that Ireland scramble D was very good the other day. Like it was a bit like South Africa, where they flew up narrow and then Wales got to the outside, and you thought, here we go, but then all of a sudden there was Kelleher or whoever it was steaming across the pitch. So that their wingers have to be mindful that they might be put in space a couple of times and then the space is shut down. But one of the things that I did notice and that Wales exploited a couple of times is that in that scenario, Hugo Keenan tends to come flying up. Like he's sensing danger, he's coming flying up to shut it down, and it opens up the backfield. So getting the likes of Pinot and Villiers into that space can really open up a good territory gain for a long punted kick, and I would expect them to go there, especially in the early goings, to try and get a handle on the territory game as well.
True enough.
And just playing with depth. Ireland are coming off the line with pace. You could saw what they were trying to do against Wales. They're shutting down the outside, playing with that same depth, filling the wide channels, giving Ireland a different, curious picture, making the game happen 2 or 3 passes away from contact every time. That's definitely where they want to go.
Absolutely, multi-pass, kind of just moving the point of contact as much as you can, and try and make the Ireland defence as raggedy as you can and capitalise and get the home crowd on fever pitch. Oh God, if the pre-match routine was anything to go by with the Italy game, it's just going to be hopping come kick-off as well. The French will be in full voice and ready to welcome this Irish challenge. And speaking of Ireland, I guess we'll look on to their winning conditions out in Paris.
Yes,
which
because everything we just outlined, we very much don't want to happen.
Indeed, the opposite of that. More rucks, please. Lots of possession for us, no ball for France. Ideally, 0% possession for France, but that's not going to happen. But keep building is the mantra that the team have been putting forward into the media, and it is hammered into what they're trying to do. There is more in them. It's evident even in the last game that there were points left out there, and it was only a 10-point margin despite a dominant first half. And
there were long periods of the game where they were being wasteful.
Indeed, profligate with chances. So that's an improving kind of. It's a fledgling offence in some ways, and it's nice to have things to continue to build towards. The 0 tries conceded by the defence last week was very encouraging. Granted, they threw a pick, but that's not really on the defence. But as you say, it's a very different challenge. Can they adjust? Because they have been flying up narrow and kind of forcing it out wide. But France will generally play with a little bit more depth, which means that kind of pressure, the Josh van der Fleer shoot that he's going to lead on the inside is generally less effective when the ball is going 2 or 3 passes away from the ruck, which is what France will be looking to do. So can they adjust that defensive line to the French challenge, which they have kind of come up a little short on in the last couple of games they've had against them? It's going to be a tough one for them.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. It's definitely a key area. We do have the starting team for Ireland. One of the benefits of being a little late with the pod this week, we do get to see the teams. Obviously, the bulk of it is the same, but there is one. Obviously, it's Porter, Kelleher, Furlong, Tyke Byrne, James Ryan, Killen Darris, Josh, and Jack Conan. Same pack as started the opening game, and same backline as well with Aki, Ringrose, Hanson, Conway, Keenan, and Gibson Park. Minus one talismanic figure,
Jonathan Sexton.
Yes, there will be no Tom Brady at the helm for Ireland this week.
Philippe Saint-Andre does finally get his wish in match week, although it wasn't Ross Byrne they opted for, which was his suggestion. But no, Carberry gets hit what is to be his first Six Nations start, despite the fact that he's over 30 caps and he's beaten the All Blacks multiple times.
Nearly 6 years into his apprenticeship, he gets his first Six Nations start, and it is, from his point of view, like the career of Joey Carberry. When that book is written, this is going to be one of the big seminal moments as to whether he goes up or down.
Well, it's also it's the Carberry thing, but it's also Carty comes in on the bench as well from Connacht is the other subplot, and he will get minutes. He'll get minutes in the last quarter, which is not necessarily where I love Connacht 10's performances of late, but he has been there knocking on the door as well with some decent form. So it's a chance to get a look at these out-halves that are behind Sexton, very much so still. With a mind towards the World Cup on the macro, it's probably a good thing for Ireland to kind of force this upon him. It's a crunch time, it's a game in Paris, and it's a good test of the system. Not only is it going to be a test of can we continue barnstorming or playing with ambition amongst the forwards when we lose one contact in 3, which wasn't happening against Wales, but will presumably happen in Paris. You're going to lose some collisions. Yeah. Can you keep going? And it's also a test of how much can Joey marshal things himself from 10? Can he operate within this system? He'll benefit from the minutes he got last week because he's just back from injury just before, which is very.
Just like what was so great about what Sexton was doing was just how comfortable and experienced he looked like. He'd seen it all. He knew exactly what needed to be done in any given moment, what the right option was. He was pretty consistently selecting the right option in every moment. And even when he wasn't executing like 100%, he always knew the right play. And here you have Joey, who came on last week and sort of a little bit deer in the headlights. I mean, Ireland were slowing down anyway. The replacements in the forward pack also slowed them down last week, where they gave away a crossing penalty and had a couple of other bad moments. But then he had a couple of moments as well when he was in that pivot position, he got the ball in behind and he just didn't know the right pass to give, and then tried a bit of footwork and got stopped behind the line. And it's that kind of stuff where you just don't have the same kind of time at test level, and he's presented all of a sudden with a picture that he hasn't seen before at test level, and it becomes very difficult to execute. So it remains to be seen. It's an uphill push. Obviously, would rather have Sexton in the team than not for this game.
Being said, he went very well against the Argentinians, but then again, the Argentinians were at the end of a terrible season that was resulting in their coach getting sacked, and it was a home game. This is one of the 5 big tests for Ireland away from home this year. Indeed. There's Paris, there's London, and then there's 3 times in New Zealand. And it's all eyes on Joey Carberry, but also to another extent, it's a bigger test for Gibson Park because it's a new combination. Like, they don't play together at club level or provincial level, and it's going to be tempo from Whiskey that we're looking for. But can he get a little bit of telepathy going with Carberry? Who knows? Do you think on paper it's a good matchup for him? I would, to be honest, I'm kind of forlorn looking at Joey Carberry out there with Conor Murray a lot of the time, and for Munster that's true. I would rather see him with a halfback like Casey in Munster's colours, or just a halfback who's going to clear things quickly and give him a little bit more time that way. Remains to be seen how that goes.
Oh no, for sure, it's definitely a key matchup and a key combination. But just to round out the team, we also have the replacements that have been named as well. They have Ireland have Dan Sheehan, Cian Healy and Philly Bealham covering the front row, same as last week. Big news is that Ian Henderson back in to cover at lock. Ryan Baird, while exciting, I think even last week his impact partially just revealing, it's just a step down. He's not quite there. He's not quite where he needs to be to play in these big test matches. Peter O'Mahony, brilliant impact. Great to have Hendo with them now, and hopefully that will cancel out some of what they're doing as well. Then obviously he's mentioned Jack Carty with Conor Murray, and Robbie Henshaw comes in at 23, and that's probably a shrewd manoeuvre. It's kind of half a 6-2 split in of itself, because Henshaw can do all that grunty forward work. He'll come on and have a physical impact along with Henderson and O'Mahony.
The talking point is 3 Lions, and you're looking at O'Mahony and Henderson and Henshaw to come off the bench. Should be good impact, and yet Ireland's track record with finishers not quite as good. Part of it is the dip off when Sexton leaves the field in terms of at 10 and the assuredness, but Yeah, the 60 to 70 minute mark has not been a purple patch for Ireland, despite the subs coming in. So hopefully we can get that balance a bit right in Paris. Things like Henderson makes perfect sense when you were talking, the same reasons we were talking about the likes of Willems and the 6-2 split that France are bringing. You just know that it's going to be big, hefty forwards that are meeting you in the contact. And the times that Ireland have lost and come unstuck, and even Leinster coming unstuck recently, has been to mighty, colossal packs like that.
Yeah, so, indeed. And it's like in the absence of Sexton, it's the job of the forward pack. Like one of the things that I noticed like immediately and consistently throughout the Ireland-Wales game, and we mentioned it earlier on, was the speed with which the team was operating just as a whole. Yeah. Like it was remarkable, and it was on both sides, but they were springing from phase to phase.
It was night and day from what we were looking at in that Autumn Nations Cup thing when everything was pedestrian and static.
Yeah, indeed. But they were springing from place to place. On the offensive end. Sexton was barking orders at them, and this is kind of what helps as well. But Gibson Park was pushing a really, really hard tempo. They were working from one end,
clearing rucks wonderfully well.
But then the ball comes back and Gibson Park has it, and he looks up, and there's the same shape. Your pot of three in position, running onto the ball, each of them an option. Sexton's going to swoop in behind. They get to one end, then they go back, then Gibson Park would get there, he'd instantly pick it up and pass it again, and the same shape would be there. They'd constantly be running those shapes, and Sexton is kind of calling and adjusting the plays as they go, but everyone was reacting remarkably. And then the same was true on the defensive end. Ireland were springing up, making big tackles, getting up again, not competing too much in most of the multi-phase sequences, but getting up, covering the field, flying out, getting back on side, flying out, very, very well. And that's the kind of energy they need to bring. And there's so much that contributes to that. Obviously, the presence of your captain. I mentioned James Ryan has taken over the captain, but also the captaincy, but also like the fact that it's the Viva Stadium, that they're so used day in, day out to training and playing on this surface where you just know each blade of grass so well. It's just so much easier to fall into shape. All of a sudden you're away from home.
It's also much easier to get up off the deck and go again when you have, your 40,000 odd home fans screaming at you to get up and get back in the line.
It was not like it was a raucous atmosphere.
No, I know, but it's easier to have that little bit of boast of energy when you're at home, and it's a lot's been made of it. It's arguably more prescient this year with the fact that 2 years of COVID means that the fans are only just back, and we had 3 home wins last weekend, and I dare say the bookies are hedging towards that, obviously Italy game notwithstanding, but it's going to be tough for them to try and match that energy level, and it'll be interesting. They need to arrive to the pitch, because otherwise
and they need to bail out Joey as well. Like Gibson Park is going to be great for bringing tempo, but they all need to be like cognizant and conscious of where they're going and what they're doing and trying to be effective. Because there are forwards in those pivot positions off 9, even off lineouts. There are sometimes forwards in the 12 channel. Gibson Park is sometimes playing 10, but they need to be picking sharp lines, playing off one another really well, bringing speed and skill to what they're doing, so that when the ball gets to Joey, first of all, it's the right option to give it to him. He doesn't have a guy in his face, and he does have a bit of space to work with. And when not, they're bringing dynamism to the carry. They're dumping it off to the right guy and the most favourable
guys like Bundy, and then if Henshaw comes in,
Daragh, like if you notice Entomac in the line and there's a forward running down that channel, hit that forward. I don't care. Like that's going to go forward. Then you're going to get the ball. You're going to get rhythm. You're going to go again. And then all of a sudden, the great Edwards defence, some of the bad French habits will show when they're just a little slower to fold around the corner. That some of them jump offside sometimes, and they can look a little sloppy. It's all about getting that initial go forward. Absolutely. And that's where set piece becomes so important too.
Very much so, this all-action front row that's been all the talk of the town. Big test in Paris against a pack that'll outweigh them.
Porter's good, a great loose head, and I like the fact that he's been brought into the starting team. But we're not as strong scrummaging-wise with him there as we were a couple of years ago with prime Keane Healy.
It's true. So we're definitely lighter on the bench with Finlay Bealham, who comes in first, because Tide tends to leave the field a little earlier than Porter, because Porter's a very fit dude. The scrum does suffer a little bit in that regard. We're less aggressive on it, and just even in the lock department, we're a little lighter than we were with Tadhg Byrne in there.
Although I'm optimistic that Big Ian Henderson coming in can have an impact on that.
It's true. So the scrum parity is what they're seeking. They need clean ball from their own ball, need to lock it down when the French are trying to get a nudge on and be accurate in that set piece. The other part of being accurate is just don't create as many of them. If you can hold the ball, which is going to be their plan A, then there are no scrums. And that's the one way to avoid that set piece. Line-out still massively important.
It's just such a big day for James Ryan.
It is.
Like, there's no big Ian Henderson calling the line-outs. He'll be calling the line-outs. He's captain.
Yeah. Himself and Tig need to share that responsibility and just secure that set piece. They are there as ball-handling, ball-winning forwards in that line-out. They have some useful units in the back row who all can jump, with the exception of Josh van der Fleer, who's normally kind of half-back or half-back off some of those maul formations, but both Daragh and Conan competent in the air. It'll be they need to get those combinations right and be sharp and accurate and vary it up.
The offense won't happen if they don't have a line out.
Indeed, and they be aware of things like Wokey's threat in there. I'm sure they are. They're doing tape on that. He's a rangy guy who has a penchant for nicking line outs, and I know guys like Peter O'Mahony who will come off the bench have a similar MO on the game. Defensive line out is almost where he's at his most expert. So introducing guys like that in the second half, and Ian Henderson should be able to kind of improve things like in that set piece. The maul be very important as well. Their maul formation has been pretty good, with the exception of that crossing call that they gave away. Once they do get their maul set, they are dynamic and they're pretty well structured. Can they get after this French side who are bigger than them, but maybe a little less technical in their formation of the maul?
It's possibly true.
Possible. It's always tougher defending one than getting one going as well. So milking penalties, trying to create chances, trying to suck those forwards in and be deceptive. Deception and speed and accuracy have to be part of the Ireland plan, because for the last few years, we're not going to just run through France, and we know that. And the lessons learned of the last few years is that we're a very physical side, but we're not the most physical side in the world, and we're going to come across bigger packs. And if the MO is run through brick walls over and over, you're not going to do it.
Even South Africa can't sustain that. No. As them, they are the most physical side, but you need a bit of subtlety, unless or you need to play defense. You cannot just play offense by smashing teams.
The plan, their most success against French teams, and even looking at Leinster v Toulouse a few years ago in the RDS, has been hold the ball. Hold the ball as long as you can, because their breakdown work is not as accurate. They don't tend to go in for the poach game. They try to come off the line and smash it.
Sometimes they smash through rucks if you don't resource them. Shane Launch did that a couple of times last week.
They will eyeball you if you're weak on it, but their MO will be to try and defend proactively in the contact area, in the collision first, and then they'll soak up through phases. But if Ireland can be accurate enough and calm enough to retain the ball, be accurate on their clean out, no side entries like you're saying, no sloppy stuff like that, and just work this French team with your offence, work them through phase after phase, then catch them offside, and then be ready to strike when it is open. That is their MO for it. They still are going to have to be acutely aware of the dangers when France have the ball. Transition is so tough. Big day for Hugo Keenan, who has been excellent and very assured in his tenure at 15. He's still quite a young player despite that, and no bigger challenge for those backfield guys than a France team who are going to break the line. You are going to have to tackle and front up and be able to shut down very dangerous plays.
Communicate well. I mean, last week, they, as you rightly point out, they conceded no tries. They were very aggressive in the offence. They were dominant in the collision area. Would you be confident, do you reckon, that same system that they had used last week will...
No, that's why I was highlighting. I think this French team will stand deeper than Wales and will try and go wider than Wales, as we were saying, in their MO. So then suddenly things like Josh van der Fleer's line speed, which is great against most teams, just shooting up as he does. He brings a lot of speed to kind of pressure the 10 and then force a hurried pass, and then suddenly they're behind the gain line getting swallowed up. Less effective than if you're shooting up out of the line like that. Then the ball does the work, and you're suddenly out of the game, and the defensive line gets a little narrow then, and then it's pushing across slowly, because we do still have the speed disadvantage. It's always a factor with Ireland, is that generally against tier 1 sides we don't have the quicker back line. It's just generally true, and that's why when they do get caught on the turn or in broken fields, it's a struggle to try and rein them in.
Although Gary Ringrose showed some turn of heel to find that try against
they're not slow.
No,
they're not slow, but they tend to be just fraction, just even matchup for matchup. I'm looking like Conway on the right wing versus Damien Pinot. Pinot's slightly quicker.
Well, Pinot is matched up against Hansen.
Yeah, he is matched. No, but they're in terms of right wing, and then on the left wing, Villiers and Hansen probably comparable. I would still say Villiers is probably just slightly quicker.
Which is good. Okay. Well, with all of that said, Shane, how do you see this one going?
Well, my allegiances are with Ireland, and my prediction goes that way. I'm going to say that we do conquer France, and it's a great day for everyone involved. It's going to be a one-score game either way, which is just the precedent set over the last, few years of this game. I think it's going to be.
And was the one
there was the
2020 was not a
no,
one-score game.
That was a blowout.
That was the last time.
That was the one when we ended up having to go there with the notion of a bonus point win, despite the team not playing like getting a bonus point win at all, and then they got duly hosed in that one. But I think by and large, these teams just match up very, very well to create these kind of dramatic moments. Sean Edwards' defence versus this barnstorming offence. Ireland's scramble or shoot versus the French kind of razzle-dazzle off-the-cuff rugby. I think it's going to create some fabulous rugby, and I think Ireland might edge it. I'm going to say that Jack Carty kicks a winning kick.
Well, there's a picture. There's a picture. My goodness.
2-point win for Ireland.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think there's going to be success for both teams in this game in different points. I think Ireland need to start well. I think they need to start quick.
Yeah.
I think if you see early that they're unsettled and that Carberry's kicking a lot, and then all of a sudden the game could turn a different way. But I do think that if they can set up enough set pieces, their kicking game's strong enough that they can give themselves enough chances to get in. They will find some scores. France will give up some penalties, and whether it's threes or the odd try, they will find scores. And I think the French speed and the French flair at home will also find points on the other end. Ireland's speed disadvantage has told on the outside and may yet do again against a very good French team. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I predicted to be close coming to the final quarter, and then I do, if France can stay sort of injury free and introduce their 6-2 split as they plan to, there are some brilliant players in that group, and it's going to be a massive job for the likes of Henderson and O'Mahony particularly to be difference makers along with Henshaw to give Ireland physicality off the bench.
Also the biggest test for guys like Finlay Bealham off the bench.
But that's those are the weaker, kind of less impactful guys, and is the impact that a Henshaw has on the game gonna matter if Gross gets on top of Bealham is a question. And then also, as you rightly point out, Jack Carty and Conor Murray to come on. It's a questionable partnership for so many reasons. Yeah. Could it amount to a winning kick? I suppose it could, but I think more likely is that in that little period, as has been happening, Ireland come a little unstuck, look a little sloppy, and France kick on and get the win there with their very strong bench. And so I would predict a 1-score win for France, but hopefully a losing bonus point for Ireland that keeps them well in it. Because I'm not giving France anything in Murrayfield just yet. They still have to go do that.
That's true. But
they
still anyway, Cardiff as well, don't they?
Yeah, we won't get ahead of ourselves. But that is my call. It's just France. It's probably head over heart a little bit. And geez, I probably give Ireland a harder time. We're on a 9-game win streak. If we win this, it's 10, and if we win this, I'm not allowed to ever go against Ireland in a prediction.
I just never go against Ireland, so I just buy road. But I'm going to say Ireland get it done. Who do you got in this one? It is going to be a cracking game. Where are you going to be watching it from? Who do you got? Let us know down in the comments below. But with that said, I suppose we will move on to...
Thank you for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, please be sure to like and share with your friends. And if you'd like to hear more of what we have to say, please be sure to subscribe and click that bell so you get notified when we upload our videos. And please join the comment section as well. We like to get a fun conversation going here.